Alright, we are ready to get started. I have tea on the way still. I'm still boiling water. But we'll get started, and I will take a quick break when that happens. So, time to look at this parsing stuff. So first of all, the parsing stuff is spread out all over the place. It's not consolidated, so I want to get an overview of where these things are. Config.4coder, here we go. Process config data, okay. Dump file, open file. Where is the stuff about config bool var and all that? Okay. Okay. Cool. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and we're going to make a 4coder config.cpp, and we're going to move stuff into there just so we know where all of the relevant code is. I may end up obliterating this file by the end of the day. Read config line, read config item, config var, bool var, blah 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 blah, array next item, config array good, boom, boom, keywords, default init. Just leave you right there, I guess. Yep. Alright, process config data. Boom. Process config file. As you can see, this set was very spread out. I didn't even realize it was that spread out. Load color theme data. Load color theme file. Load themes folder. Okay. I don't think any of the rest of this is relevant. So let's come over here to include, and we will just say right here after default framework, let's put in config.cpp. Process config file. Okay, default 4coder initialize wants to see those, and I'm assuming these probably want to see a bunch of global variables. So here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to put config above default framework, and that's going to break a bunch of shit. We're going to slowly work to unbreak it. So Lexer keywords default init. Damn, I didn't even expect that one. Okay. I was not prepared for that. Let's just pull that out of default framework. Lexer keywords default init. And let's put that into helper. Okay. Alright, this is what I was expecting to see. All of these things not working. Alright, cool. Cool. Alright, so now we can get those things working if we come over here and we go, alright, default wrap width. Here's what we're going to do, is we're going to start saying that there's this, I guess we're going to need a 4coder config.h. There we go. Default wrap width. So here we go. We're going to say there's config data. It's going to have default wrap width, default min base width. Then I'll switch over here to the default framework. Default wrap width, default min base width. They're both ints. Oh, water's boiling. Be right back. Alright, so that'll give me another 3 minutes. Those are both ints. We will get those defaults back in there in a minute. And now we can come over here to where this problem happens. And we're going to say, alright, there's the data, and then finally config data out. Whoops, my bad. New wrap width. Call it config actually. Config default wrap width, config default min base width. There we go. And see where that gets us. Now, default include is going to need to know about config. And at some point, framework.cpp is going to want to as well. Config data static. We'll just call this config and we'll clear it to 0 to get us started. There we go. Alright, let's try and move a couple more of these things into there. So, how about you guys? Guess I should probably stick to doing these in the order that the errors come up though. So enable code wrapping. Oh, gotta go. Be right back. Alright. That's going to need to cool off for a little while. Alright. YouTube videos have gone up. And let's keep going. So, enable code wrapping, you're saying is a problem. But what if you do it this way? Automatically adjust wrapping. I realize I probably shouldn't have deleted those first two ones that I deleted the comments for. We'll just do that stuff again because, hey, why not? There we go. Alright, who's next? Boom. Boom. More problems with the reparse, I suppose. Alright, presumably these ones are up next. New wrap width. Oh, so that's not a global. Okay. That's that one sitting right there. So default theme name. That's this guy. Oh, whoops, I accidentally took those out. Doop. 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 Wobbly Bob asks, when 4.1 comes out, will the itch.io scrubs get a many dollar discount? I assume you're talking about, like, since when 4.1 comes out, it's going to be a separate page. You pay for it separately. So owning for the alpha version doesn't mean you get the beta version for free. Yeah, so I'm not sure how I want to do that. Itch.io doesn't exactly give me the tools to make it easy. I have a couple of ideas. One is I might yeah, one is I might just start off with it on sale for like 2 weeks when I first release it, so that it's just like another $12. And then if the $12 is still too much, I don't know what to say, because that's about going to be, it's going to be like $25, the new version. So it would give you a little bit less than the difference, in fact, would be the price. I might do that. I might also look into finding out what itch.io can do. You can, with itch.io, you can issue like key. You can issue a key to somebody, but that key is only for getting it for free. I don't know if you can issue a key that's a discount. I could try talking to them and see what options are available, like, you know, write to the dev team and see if they have any other recommendations, because they're pretty helpful sometimes. Not always, but usually. Although I guess the reason I say not always is actually not fair, because the people who always frustrated me were Patreon, not them. So as far as I know, they're pretty helpful, the dev team behind itch.io. So they might be able to just say, no, it's right here, or we can add that for you in time, or whatever. But maybe not. We would have to find out. Yeah, I feel like the most likely thing is that it'll just be on sale for the first 2 weeks that I create it, and then it will go to a normal price after that, which would be the price it'd stay at forever afterwards. Yeah, I actually would prefer to be able to give them a discount, because it's like, I don't mean to make it... So there's something else to be said for, like, after this many years, I've put in, you know, this many years worth of work on the thing, and the users who are using it didn't pay for that much work. They paid for the work that was in it when they bought it, and for a little bit of the work that I did afterwards. But after how many years have I putting in work that they didn't pay for when they bought the last one they bought? But at the same time, there's like a thing of like, if I charge them the same thing I charge everyone else, then it's a failure to recognize that I couldn't have gotten here without them the first time around. So the money that they've already paid has kind of earned them the right to some kind of discount to that continuation fee moving forward. I like the structure, like when it's not like me trying to deal with like 200, 300 people who are going to be buying a thing. When it's me and like 3 people that I'm selling something to, it's very natural to be like, all right, if it's your first time buying this thing from me, then you pay this much, and then for every subsequent year or whatever of support, you pay a much smaller continuation fee from then on. And that's kind of what I would like to do here, except that with so many more people, it's hard to figure out how to organize that logistically. If I could, I would, absolutely. So like, big new build comes out, you pay the continuation price if you've already bought this, but if you're coming in now, you pay the full price. For all the, basically at that point you're paying for all the work that I've done up to that point, which is Like some of those people have paid for half the work I did up to that point, but these people haven't paid for that work. That's basically the way I think about it. It's a way to think about it anyway. Alright, so change mapping. I believe that's hanging out over here. So the remapping doesn't get defined until down here, which is why we forward declare it in default framework, but we're trying to make config. But config does need to be able to do the remapping. So does named mapping live in config.cpp now? Is that the point? What's the point of, the point of having all the config code is simply to keep it all organized in one place for the time being while I work on it. It might be worth it to say that I just copy that in there, but there's another thing I considered at one point, which was, you know what, we're going to do this. So but I don't want to do all of it right now because I also want to get off this. So we're just going to move you for now. We intend to move at all of them, but you are the only one for now. sure why that isn't just right up there. Jeez, oh Pete. Yeah, I really made this hard on myself. Okay. We're going to be introducing some bugs this time around, I think. I could just leave these ones for another pass, which is what I think I should probably do. Alright. So, that's how we process config data. Now I'm going to add one that's hold on. First naming. I need to switch the color scheme up here. Nothing's working for me today. That works. Okay. Config data parse. Okay. Cool. Static void. By the way, okay, so config init default config data. Alright, and this is where we're going to give a quick look at this again and init everything to its default value. Default theme name. Replace theme with font. Default font with, no. Yeah. Replace default font with user. Okay, let's try that again. Default font with user. There we go. Username. Username space. Alright. Username with capital Z. 2, 2, 3, 4. Z with default compiler bat. Z with default flags bat. Z with default compiler sh. Z with default compiler default flags sh. Memset config treat as code or code extensions with 0. So there we go. That initializes pretty much all the defaults, with the exception of the two things we've skipped so far. Okay. Now, some of these, we want to set their strings. So once we're done setting all those strings, their memory, which I'm probably going to do up here. Nah. We'll set their memory as we set their value. So this is going to be copy into here, CL. Alright, that's you. Oops. Default flags. Default compiler sh. Default flags sh. Yeah, it's totally unclear why that isn't just organized like this. Alright. Alright, so this one is gonna be... nope. 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 Okay. Alright, so this one just has the responsibility of doing the dump and passing that into parse data. This one takes the file name, yeah, I want to remove these guys completely. And that's mostly because they're using just an old sort of approach to defaults, mostly. Well, get current name is actually a tiny bit different, but I mostly don't like it either. Jeez, oh Pete, some of this stuff is so stupid. Okay, so we're going to go to config.h, global config, default theme name, yeah, this is not going to stay this way for very long. while I'm here, I'm going to clean this up because I don't like this part of this system. There we go. That's much better. taking a quick break to check chats and whatnot. The Twitch chat is calm, but what about on the Handmade Network? That's the one I'm looking at. Alright, now what? Okay, so everything's mostly working except for that, or at least everything's compiling. What did I just do? Please bring up that. Ah, shit, don't do that. Oh well, it's the same thing. Here's where we are. So, if we go back to config.cpp, we're going to try to get these ones compiling real quick and then see what the damage is. This appears to be a pattern that I've used twice. Hold on. Alright, with the following modifications they become identical. That goes there. And those all go together. Alright, let's move that into helper. Open file. Try path, then binary path. Char star file name. Application links app. And it goes like this. Whoops. Return file. Grab a file. If that file is 0, we get the forehead, path size, and memory. That's gone. That's just debugging nonsense, probably. Make string cap, size of space, append that. If we can terminate this with null, open the file. And now file equals open file, try current path, then binary path, app file name, boom ba-doom. Boom ba-doom. Okay. Now first I'm going to do this in a kind of opposite order to the one I did up here because I already know how I want these named. So config parse data. This is going to be theme parse data. We're going to want two of these. One of them is theme parse file handle. Theme parse file handle app file theme parse file name Okay, so that's a start. Now we need to ask ourselves, does this rely on an arena? And the answer is yes. Doesn't rely on general memory, right? No? Okay. So let's go and push that through everywhere. Okay, so there's a start. Okay. How does that look? Right, okay. So I don't like that at all either. And we're gonna go to town on it. In what order will I go to town? I think the first thing I will do in town is we're gonna get rid of this. We're gonna take a look at why that's happening. It's because of this create theme thing here. That's why this doesn't return any real information, which is why we need to go like this. Theme. Theme data. Name. Theme. Boom, boom. Theme data. Theme. There we go. Alright, so if that's going to be our output, we actually do want the file name to come all the way down. Oh, I see. Nope. Alright, so now what we want to do is here we have all that stuff under control. Success, theme parse file name. App, global part, file name, theme. theme.theme, theme.namestring, theme.namesize, partition scratch, partition scratch, scratch, global part, folder name, themes. Wait, hold on. Alright, folder name, Alright, there we go. Now we're sort of kind of getting somewhere. Oh, man. So, when I call this here, what does it use the app for? It just uses it for printing that message when there's a problem. Alright, that's gonna die. And then this can die. Which means this can go away. Just considering how I want to do these error messages in the real world. Because if someone called this, they wouldn't get an error message, even though this code knows that it did not manage to parse. Which raises the question, should I pass a file name in here and the app pointer so that I can report that error? I think that this whole situation is going to become different, actually. As we make progress towards the new parser will do error messages. Alright, there we go. Now we need to take some time to run this. We're getting close to the end of this section of the stream. We start up just fine. We did not manage to load all of the themes, so let's focus on that first. What? The theme name didn't get set? That would explain the problem. There's our problem. Okay. working, it would appear. Yep. Alright. I also want to double check that config stuff is still working. So suppose I test that by going, well, let's take a look at when this launches. What is the config file here? And let's say we did okay. If 4coder has a killer feature, hold on a minute, my tea's gotten room temperature, I gotta finish it. If 4coder has a killer feature, it would be one of these two things. One is the customization API. That's not an awesome killer feature though, because every editor has it, and 4coders is just better, is my only claim. The other one is the virtual whitespace system. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I don't exactly understand why people would prefer 4coder over anything else if it's not for one of those two reasons, and I don't even fully see why you'd prefer the customization layer by itself. Like, you're gaining something with the customization layer, you lose a little bit of pre-existing libraries and stuff. But if you're using virtual whitespace, then I can see why it's I could see why it's attractive to you then, because that is actually the best sort of the best in class thing that 4coder does. Alright, cool. Yep, it looks like the config stuff is working. If you don't know what virtual whitespace is, let me know and I will give you a quick demo. Alright. It's a little bit like Vim. I mean, in terms of the way it's super minimalistic, it's definitely got a Vim-like look. It's more closely related to Emacs in terms of functionality. Alright, so you want to see virtual whitespace? I'll show you. So here's some 4coder. And if I turn it off for a minute, okay, I'm going to turn off line wrapping, and I'm going to turn on a thing that shows me the white space. So this is just rendering spaces, almost basically a debug feature, but once in a while useful. So you can see I can move around like a normal text file, delete stuff, auto indent the text. I can go, oh look, the text here is a little bit messed up. That's weird, right? Have it automatically fix things like you would normally do in an editor. I know there's another spot where I just saw that the text is a little bit messed up. There we go. There we go, and so on, right? So that's not virtual whitespace. This is normal text editing stuff. You can auto indent stuff, insert spaces. Like if I go beginning of this line to the end, it still leaves this blank thing here. If I'm here and I press left, it doesn't take me right there. So to get from here to there, I have to go up and then hit end line, for instance. If if I want to get from here back to the beginning of that line, I could go here, here, but of course, whoops. Problem with that is that takes me all the way to there, and so I can do that kind of thing. So that's without virtual white space. I'm going to leave the thing on that highlights the white space, and I'm going to enable virtual white space. Alright, so now all the white space is virtualized. You can see it isn't rendering spaces there anymore. So what happened? Is there still space there? Well, the answer is there is, but if I insert more spaces, I'm inserting spaces right now, you don't see them. If I turn virtual white space back off, you can see it actually came all the way over here. And so virtual white space means that the white space that's actually in the lines is irrelevant. It just renders it as code. So whether or not you have spaces or tabs, it always lines things up correctly is one of the nicest reasons to use this. But and it also means that if I insert with spaces and you insert with tabs and we mix, unless it's the only thing that will get us is the source control that doesn't understand that it can ignore white spacing, because the editor no longer has to be involved in making decisions about that, since it's irrelevant. Another thing it does is you don't ever have to ask for it to automatically indent. So if I turn off the thing that renders the white space for a minute, suppose well, it's something reasonable that I need to do next. Well, there's a good example right there. If I hit backspace, it deletes that whole line at once, because it doesn't let me edit individual spaces between here and there. As far as it's concerned, there's a new line right here and nothing else in between, even though it knows there's actually space in there. It's edited and treated as if there isn't. It's all virtualized out. Another thing, if I were to come in here and say move this line down, you can see it automatically realigns everything as it does that. If I surround this in braces, it automatically does those. If you leave a brace hanging, it shifts everything, and you can see that my braces are messed up, and then you can fix it. And I guess the last thing is I kind of harped on this at the beginning, so if I press left right there, it takes me right there. You can see it doesn't let me, I can't go into there because that's virtualized out. As far as it's concerned, this is now the beginning of the line. And so that just basically means that you never ever spend any time thinking about the white space that indents your lines. Then if I turn on line wrapping, you get the other really nice thing about virtual white space is without virtual white space, I don't know how I would do this. But with virtual white space, I don't know how I would do it cleanly. But with virtual white space, suppose I shrink down to a small view like this. Alright, so you can see here, do you see that it's kind of light colored? Maybe a different theme would make it more visible. You see that slash there? That's not in the code, that's line wrapped. So it saw, okay, this line is too long, and it didn't just wrap at the first character that was off the edge. It chose a spot to wrap where it thought it would most likely look nice to insert a wrap. So in this case, it sees an equal sign, and it says, you know what, the thing after an equal sign can usually go on the next line down and look okay. Here it decided to do it again, and it decided to split up two parameters. Again, parameters. Up here, it looks like we have an equal sign and then a parameter. We've got here it gets a little bit complicated to read because the code is maybe not spaced out very nicely the way it should be. So like this should probably be spaced more like this. That makes it a little nicer. Plus I don't have a theme with right, so you can see that this means that if you and I are writing on code on very different styles of window layout, we won't have to worry about how we're wrapping lines. Now you can see that like right here I did insert a new line, and if I took that out, then the wrapper would probably, yeah. So here you can see I'm taking out new lines that were actually there, and it's deciding to wrap there anyway. But if I went full screen with this, it would look at them and be like, oh, there's plenty of room for those. So now it's laying them out differently based on whether or not there's room. But you might think, okay, if you can insert new lines like here, it's not taking that new line out. The final version of this would be that you never ever even type new line characters anymore. That code is always correct. I guess like it's always correctly formatted for your screen and saved with the new lines added and removed freely, fluidly, you might say. So yeah, it's not fully done yet, but that's virtual whitespace. All right. It also means that you can do things like if I copy code from one place to another, the indentation's automatically correct always. Which you can also get with an auto indenter, but it takes less work on the CPU to do the indentation this way because it doesn't actually have to re-edit the text until you save the file. Anyway, now that said, there are a number of people who use 4coder without virtual whitespace, so they get something else out of it, and my brain doesn't fully understand that phenomenon. I think that those people are just in it for the C customization entirely. So, what do we need to work on next? We can now we've now fully pulled the config data out into its own thing where it lives. So the next thing is there's a few features of the config that require this app to come in from up here. I want to see how close we can get to removing app from that call. Default key bindings. You can go to 4coder.com and bindings. So 4coder.net/bindings has the full list of all the bindings. And it has both the Mac variation and the non-Mac variation. Right now it just pairs each one up with a description of its command. In the full version of the site that's going to come later on in my to-do list, here, there will actually be a database of a description for all the commands, and then these will just be links to the commands. Thanks, man. I didn't realize, Filiadelsky, I didn't realize you had not tried 4coder before. I guess, I don't know, we've chatted several times and I just always assumed that you were a 4coder user for some reason. Alright, so, so the first problem is this change mapping thing. Now let's take a look at why that's there. That's there just because there's nothing here that stores the mapping. So we're going to go char current mapping space 256 string current mapping. Um, Determinist, yeah, Emacs was kind of the starting off point for. I didn't start with the code base of Emacs or anything, but I started by studying the behavior of Emacs, cutting a bunch of nonsense, refining a few things, and implementing that. Basically, It's basically operates as an Emacs replacement, and most users who have switched off of Emacs because of that. Sweet. Yeah, so you can use the demo, and once you get the full version in the next build, Casey's 4coder customization will be included. So you'll be able to use basically the exact same setup he had in Emacs, except with his modal weirdness. The reason he switched to 4coder originally was so that he could use the C customization instead of the eLisp stuff, because he was encountering too many bugs trying to implement his modal setup that way. And yeah, in the course of like 4 days of programming, he was able to fully like reconceive the 4coder editing paradigm to be his crazy thing that he has now that I can hardly use, but that's fully modal. I always have trouble when there's bugs that I have to test with his binding, because once in a while I get a bug from him or someone else who's like, using this layer, I get a bug here, or what's going on, and I have so much trouble using it because mostly because it's modal and I'm not used to that, but it's like, when you're in the non-inserting mode, like weird things like Z to open a file and stuff that I'm just not, I have a hard time remembering all of them. Alright, so instead of what we're currently doing, I'm just going to have it store the mapping into config current mapping. Internal static void says I like Visual Studio. You mean for editing code? That's cool. I used that for a while actually. I think, if I remember correctly, the reason I started switching off was because the reason I liked Visual Studio originally was it had the code IntelliSense stuff, and I was encountering bugs with that more and more often as I was, getting up to the point where I switched off. So for a while I kept using it, even though I was sort of like only half using the IntelliSense, because I didn't really consider it important to switch to a different editor. But as soon as I started getting used to other editors, I could never really see myself going back. Like I did Notepad++ for a while, and that was okay. Then I did Emacs for a while, and then I did 4coder. And that's where I've settled. Although, in fairness, the only reason I use 4coder is because I control the code base. I probably wouldn't use 4coder if it wasn't mine. You know, like if the exact same product, but I didn't control it, then that means on a daily basis I can't just be like, oh, gonna go tweak this one thing real quick. And I'd probably be less likely to adopt it. I don't know. Maybe I would still use it. Actually, since it's got virtual whitespace, I would probably still use it. Whoops. I'm actually still going to do this one this way. Okay. Change mapping, app, config, current mapping. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, all of these things here are what we do. Oh, you can see there's a line wrap triggering right there. Do you see that? It wraps differently when it believes it's a comment versus code. So it looks a little goofy right there, but yeah. Which also means, by the way, when I did this, you can see it didn't insert slashes there. Why is that? Because this is actually part of the same line and it's wrapped. And this multi-line editing operation works on textual lines, not on visual lines. So it's kind of got some cool consequences. Anyway, you can just like edit code without concern for whether or not the wrap is interfering or not. Alright, we'll be just done in a second here, I think, and then I'll take another short 5-minute-er. Close panel. Control-Shift-P. Yeah, so the bindings are a bit confusing. Lowercase p versus uppercase p indicates which one. This is all going to change the binding setup because it doesn't really work for... It's more like control capital P, and capital P is with shift P. Yeah. In the future, this will explicitly say Control Shift and lowercase p, as I'm going to stop using I'm going to stop using textual input as the basis for commands. It's only going to be the basis for text input events. For actual keyboard events other than textual input stuff, like modified by Control Alt type things, I'm going to switch to virtual key codes, so that it'll solve a couple of problems, both for international users and for confusion like what you just had. All right. So now when we parse the data, we're going to say return out the other end if there was a success. And then this will pass that information on. Well, you know what, actually I'll do something a little bit different. Alright, so there we go. We always get a config back, it's just sometimes we just get the default one when something goes bad. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about a lot of the work that went into workflow stuff, but yeah, the build window at the bottom is kind of nice. I prefer it a lot over the Casey style. Casey will just build and have one whole panel go to that, and I don't really like it that way. Takes up too much space for me. I don't usually want to see the whole thing at once, you know. So just having it pop up at the bottom here is useful. And then when you get used to the commands for moving it around and stuff, it's kind of fun. Alright, so this is the stuff that does the parsing. I want to move these things which do immediate results after that. So config parse file name. We're going to add a static void apply new configuration, which takes app links. And that reminds me, does this actually need app at all? I think all of these error messages are going to get an upgrade here during this project. We're a little low on time, so a lot of this will happen off stream, I guess. Sweet. Okay, so we're pretty close. Now when we run this, it doesn't apply any changes. It's only parsing data into the struct. And you have to run this afterwards to actually apply it. So then we can do load config file. Well, no, we can't do that. But what we can do is we can say, where is our initialize? Okay. So we initialize the global config like that, and then we apply new configuration. Take the app and the global config. So yeah, what we could do is we could say static void load config and apply. And that will just be like this, except that config still has to come in as a pointer. Global part still has to come in this way. Scratch config data config, and I'm gonna say let's just do this. So load config and apply takes all of that minus that. Sweet. Okay, so I want to double check that some of these things are still working. So the ones that could be broken are change mapping. Let's give it a shot. Leaving bindings unaltered, huh? Why are you saying that? 4coder remapping commands. Leaving set bindings. Set bindings. For coder default framework change mapping. For coder config.cpp change mapping. All right. Yeah, they don't. That's intentional. So your Philadelphia is pointing out that when you have the little build window and you want to increase the font size and you do Control-Shift+, that doesn't get any bigger down there. And that's, I mean, you might not like that as a design decision, but that's that is what's supposed to happen. So if you wanted to increase the size of that font, there's two options. One thing you can do is when you launch, just pass the flag -F with whatever size you want. I generally set the size there, but if you're trying to change on the fly, you can go to here, Alt-C, to bring up your theme editing, set font, and in here you'll see the fonts in play, and you'll see that this thing has a different font face than everything else. And so you can go, you know, I want to edit this one, and then you can come in here and increase its size. Right? Make it italics. Oh, that font doesn't have italics. Make it italics, make it bold, make it underlined, give it hinting. Okay. So I want to wrap this one up. I just want to double check that this thing is working. So I was setting a command or a breakpoint here on the mapping changer thing. Who's calling you? Load config and apply. Current mapping. Alright, the current mapping has not been set. So we're leaving bindings unaltered. Now, that's actually correct now that I think about it, but let's launch that. Don't need to stop there anymore. Pull up my config file, and we're going to say Mac 4coder like. Launch it again. Yeah, so Philadelphia says that this is an editor, I assume you're talking about 4coder, where you don't have to jump through burning rings of fire to change font properties. I know, I'm sorry, the rings of fire are coming, I promise. They'll be in there in the sometime in the next few builds. Leaving bindings unaltered. Is 4coder like not an option anymore, maybe? No, it's not an option. I see. So the config file I have sitting there is just wrong. That's the problem. Yep, okay, that definitely worked, because, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm gonna have to fix that. Okay. Last one. Boom, boom. Okay, so that one is working. What's the, oh shit, did I close the real one? Let's take a look at the line count, by the way. Alright, it's gone up another 50. I never really can keep my line counts low. Alright. Yeah, that's relevant, that's relevant. Okay, so we have everything still working, and now we've nicely pulled out all the parsing only code to basically be in these two things. Here and here. where it lexes the file and then does this like weird loop to find the things and pair them up. So I'm going to take another break. When I come back, the goal will be we're going to write, and this is going to be something we don't get done today apparently because I've only got 2 hours left, but we can get a lot of it done. I'm going to write a real parsing system that actually parses the grammar for these config files for reals. And once we have it working for config and theme, then I will get back to the original plan of making it work for the project system so that the project system can be upgraded. It might not be till next weekend that we actually get to upgrading the project system even a little bit, but we're getting there. So, I'll be right back.